A little bit more. You go.
Let everybody in.
It's like it's on the line.
Let me take a YouTube off in case that's what's doing it. Okay.
When I was, the mayor in our meeting with the ISD folks last week, probably last week, we could hear some type of feedback.
Yes, I got that too. IT came down here this morning and we came out here and so it should work good. We're hoping.
So are they connected now, Glenn and Aaron?
Yes.
Okay. All right, 6:31, I'm going to call the City Council special meeting to order. This is an open meeting subject to the open meeting laws of the state of Texas. This meeting is closed to the public due to the COVID disease, but we will entertain questions. If you are on the Zoom, if you'll just click your chat button and type in whatever message you would like to ask and who you would like to direct it to, we will answer your question. Or you can go onto the website and there's a place where you can do a speaker card and actually ask a question. We do have a quorum present. First thing on the work session is discuss and review the Joshua ISD District Coronavirus Relief Funds match request. Are we going to do it?
Yeah, that's fine. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read the staff comment sheets on the background here, and it's pretty straightforward. The school, via this Operation Connectivity program through the state and TEA, is reaching out. Schools have been reaching out to their local government partners, counties and cities to request basically shares of those entities' tax relief funds as they've been allocated. The school, as you know, all schools have been required to make virtual learning and distance learning available to as many students as they can. And so through this bulk purchasing program, the more money they can get from the localities, the more basically the cheaper it gets for the school, with their ultimate goal to be at no cost to the school in order to provide more Wi-Fi hotspots for their students. The mayor and I met with Superintendent Merrick and their CFO Rebecca Metzger about this early last week, and kind of went over the ins and outs of it. They do have a limited number. I think it's 750 hotspots that they're looking at getting. They have approximately, I think most of those are already spoken for, and they kind of have a tiered system in terms of what students are going to get first dibs at the hotspots, kind of basing that off of need based on every campus. So all in all, they are asking for, I think they went to the county to request, for the same request, and according to Ms. Merrick, the county has some restrictions that I guess the cities don't have in terms of what they can and can't use the relief funds for. We are allowed to request as a part of our reimbursement this pass-through, if you will, for the school. Ultimately, the amount they're asking the city to provide is just under $34,000. If they can get that amount for the entire 750 hotspots, and basically make it free for the school, they would the relief funds, the state would match whatever the locality puts in there to reduce the cost of the school, and I say ultimately for their goal to be at zero cost to the school. As it stands right now, we have submitted, we have just over $428,000 was the city's allocation of the CARES Act funding. We received 20% of that. Every recipient can request 20% of that up front, which we've already received. And then as we've gone through, the preceding months, kind of account for anything that we felt like were eligible costs, and we've submitted that to the TDEM, the Texas Department of Emergency Management, for reimbursement via those funds. That all occurred last week in terms of our application. We also had to submit documentation for that first 20%. And then we have, in that same application, we submitted for the remainder of that money. So if we get everything that we have asked to be reimbursed, we will basically get the entire $424,000 that's been allocated for the city. So that's if we get all of it. You know, there may be some things that we put in there that they don't deem eligible, and so obviously they'll reduce it by that amount. So there's really no telling how much more of our allocation from the CARES Act fund we're actually going to receive. But as it stands now, as I said, we have applied for the full amount for reimbursement. So in essence, any of the any consideration of the sharing our share of the CARES Act reimbursement fund with the school would basically be a net negative. Like if you're looking at really just the overall math, if we were to get all the money, or frankly any of the money, we would be either dipping into those funds, basically just and not taking that as a reimbursement, or you know, however you want to look at it in terms of whatever, if any amount you guys decide to pass along to the school, would be coming out of the net negative. I hate saying it that way, but ultimately, since we've already asked for a total reimbursement, that's ultimately what it would be at. It would be short, kind of short that those funds, whatever you guys decide. So that's the school. I actually had an email from Mrs. Metzger this morning. Initially, we were told they needed basically a copy of the check by October 1st. We had some indication from them that they just need a commitment letter by October 1st. So we do have some time you guys have some time to consider this. You know, if you guys want to talk about it this evening, and you can put it back on the agenda for official action on the 17th. That's something, you know, you can obviously have the luxury of doing, but that's the cost of it.
I personally think it's a worthwhile deal. You know, it's the money came to help out the community, and I think the schools definitely part of our community. I don't know that, you know, we need to do the full amount. I think we could do a percentage, and I think Ed said they were going to talk to Cleburne and Burleson, and you know, a lot of the folks from those two cities are actually going to the school as well. So I think if we did something maybe in the 10,000 to 15,000 range, I think that's using the funds for what they intended for. And as Josh had said, that's money that, you know, we're getting it sort of over and above what we thought we were going to be getting. So just my 2 cents worth. Anybody else have a comment?
When you said that the matching funds, the way I read the information from the TEA, it's the TEA actually matching it, not the state. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a TEA via the CARES Act funding. So
right.
They're another agency within the state, under the auspices of the state, that have kind of authority on where to direct some of the CARES funding. Correct. But when I say the state, I just mean, yeah, the TEA is included.
Yeah. And then, do we know what percentage of our Joshua ISD students are doing virtual learning as opposed to in class? We
asked this question. Overall, ISD 40% stayed home.
40%. Yeah. Okay. And do we know what percentage of the overall enrollment live in the city limits versus outside the city limits?
Well, I don't know that number offhand. I'm sure they probably have that. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if they actually do know.
We've had some stuff go up on the library trying to get what our citizens, and I don't think they had that particular.
I don't know if they actually keep track of that.
I would think they would know that.
Well, they keep their district boundary. They know everybody that's within the district, but I don't.
And they know what our city boundaries are, so they ought to be able to figure that out. Because based on the size of the Joshua ISD, I'd say it's probably 50-50. 50% in the city limits, 50% outside. And a large majority of those are coming out of Burleson.
Yeah.
So and that was a point, just to interject, we asked, Joe asked Ms. Merrick about this, about the county, the city of Burleson, the city of Cleburne, certainly the city of Burleson, given that you have, you know, North Joshua, Nichols, you know, part of Mountain Valleys, and, you know, splits, obviously, on the city limits. You have so many of those students in South Burleson that come to Joshua ISD. So it was our understanding that we're going to be reaching out to the city of Burleson as well.
Now, the money that you say we have earmarked for this CARES Act, These are funds that we've already spent. This is direct reimbursement.
And then all the CARES Act funding is a reimbursement-based grant, basically.
Okay,
Well, it's in the budget. We haven't really spent, I mean, would be the other 300 whatever thousand is in the 2020, 2021 budget.
Well, no, so the eligible expenses, we were able to include public safety personnel costs. So in essence, most of what, in this year's budget, okay?
Yeah, that's what we're using to get from.
Yeah, this year's budget, we were able to submit quite a few personnel costs from public safety and submit those to get reimbursed for this year. So,
but I mean, we've already expended the,
right, because we're basically, well, we're almost to the end of the fiscal year, so
Yeah,
we've already
that's-
expended it, correct? Right.
so this $34,000 would come out of our 2021 budget.
Yeah.
Well, it would come, it would actually, it would either, that's what I was saying earlier. It depends on how you look at it. It either comes out of the money once we receive it from the CARES Act funding, or we write a check out of reserves today, or we write a check out of whatever revenue we have. Ultimately, it would be the net negative. That's what I was trying to get at. It really, ultimately, doesn't matter. Not that it doesn't matter. Where the source of it would still be the general fund of the city to begin with. It's just that the timing of it is what's going to determine whether it comes from the CARES Act funding or just from the city coffers until we get reimbursed.
But
from
it's
the CARES
not,
Act.
it's not in excess of our budget.
No.
Because the 428,000 is money we've already budgeted. It's money we've already accounted for. We're just reimbursing for the extra time and effort, throughout that transition.
Yeah, this doesn't
Nothing
increase.
we
Yeah,
have.
this.
We're not over budget 428,000. We're trying to recover that.
Right.
So if we get reimbursed, it's net zero, based on the $428,000. Was net zero from what we've said our additional expenses were during this.
Not
during this
additional,
fiscal year.
not additional expenses.
It's money, it's
Again,
money.
we had to put this in the budget. If you remember in the last month's budget report, we have a specific line in each department for COVID-19 expenses, direct COVID-19 expenses. In the CARES Act, we were able to, they allowed us to submit for reimbursement public safety personnel costs. So you're talking quite a bit of salaries and wages, anything that goes with public safety personnel. Those are eligible costs we can get reimbursed on from the CARES Act funding.
So it's not necessarily additional costs.
It's not additional
any
costs.
cost.
No,
We're basically getting reimbursed for money we had already spent and budgeted.
there are some expenditures that we've had that related to COVID that we did not budget for. But the majority of our reimbursement requests is going to be for things that were already in the budget.
Personnel.
Yes.
I was trying
Yeah,
to.
this doesn't increase the budget by $400,000. The budget stays the same. I think, the overage, if you will, is probably going to amount to about 25 or 30,000 in terms of what the actual directly related to COVID that we did not account for. But in the terms of our overall budget, the proposed budget, and everything else, all those things still don't hit the bottom line as increasing the budget. You follow me?
Now as these funds, the 428 come in, do they have to be earmarked for what they were sent back for, or do they go to the general fund?
They go to the general fund because that's where they came out of it.
Yeah, the only challenge I've got is just, yes, it's a short windfall per se that we're receiving for the extra, effort and expense and stuff, when I get that. But JISD got a pretty good chunk also.
Well, what they explained to us was that what happened was the chunk they got, the state was deducted from the funds that the state was sending to them. So basically theirs was a net zero. They didn't get the funds. The state reduced the funds. Was that
Sure.
right? You
There's a
understand?
little, I remember a little bit of that, sure. But they're trying to get this as a net zero to them.
Right.
If everybody else pays it for them.
Yeah.
That's not.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying we need to maybe 10, I'm not,
Right, I think they need to, participate in some as well. I mean, they have reserves much larger than the city of Joshua. They've got, they're well established, well funded. Gosh, they got some good rankings this week on some You know, and it was related to how healthy their financial, you know, deal is. So they're pretty healthy financially and, you know, and, you know, I don't see them missing a whole lot there. I like the money to stay in-house personally. That's just my thing. I just think that, you know, JSCB's, you know, they're a good partner, but we help as well as they help, you know, but this is just flat out writing a check to the school district.
I've got a problem with giving money to benefit people that are outside the city of Joshua. We're doing that for the fire, we're doing that for all these other things. Burleson's got deep pockets, Crowley's got deep pockets, the school district 12.5 times bigger than our city. And I don't know how many towns are actually in the school district. But I don't think we ought to pay any more than our prorated share.
I think it's something that we continue to work on, you know, if you can gather
Yeah,
more information about
I
what the other cities are doing.
well, at the very least, I think what I can do is kind of what, to Robert and Scott's point, is come up with what our prorated share of this 33,750 would be, in accordance with.
And how many hot spots are inside the city limits? I
Yeah.
think because
Well, to me, that was the biggest, to me, that was the most, not something I quite understood, because you think about how many of the students are outside the unincorporated or incorporated areas to begin with. That's the county, and the county evidently has some
That's where you-
restrictions that they can't help, you know, they can't actually provide the
that's where the
funds.
Wi-Fi miss is usually.
That's my point, that's the irony behind it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure they spoke to the judge, and I'm not sure what restrictions, they mentioned the 75-25
Yeah.
split, that he has really 75%, it has to be designated for certain things, and only has kind of a discretion on 25%, and they've already spent the 25%, so they didn't have any money to give them. I didn't quite understand it, and I couldn't find anything.
It's just a lot of double speak for him to say, no, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
That's all it boils down to.
So we don't have those types of restrictions. Like I say, when in our reimbursement request, had one of the line items been passed through to the school, it would have been eligible, because that's a part of the eligibility. It's an eligible line item. So, but I could certainly go back and try to get some prorated amounts based on percentages. and
Maybe
everything.
even a better proration would be the number of hotspots that are gonna be needed inside the city of Joshua compared to outside the city of Joshua.
Mhm.
And how many in Burleson, however, and the ones out in the county, they just have to.
Everybody just needs to be back in school.
Huh?
Everybody just needs to be back in class.
That's right.
That's what it boils down to.
Angela, do you have anything you wanted to ask or something?
No, but I do agree with you guys that, I mean, we do serve a wide range of kids coming from different areas. It's not just Joshua.
And what I'll also do is, you know, since it's been a week or so since we talked to them, I can certainly reach back out to Rebecca. I told her I'd get back with her in the morning to see if they have had a chance to speak with the city of Burleson as well, because I think they would probably be the next in line in terms of the number of kids. I don't, like I say, I don't know. I've never seen any numbers about what students come from where, but they can't be too hard to find.
They've got the demographics. They've got demographics on everything.
Yeah.
They've got them.
So is that, did you have anything? Rick?
No, I want them on the prorated share. So we need to help them out both.
Just tell Mr. Merrick that, I mean, we're more than willing to work. We just need to have a little bit more specific as to where the city's aspect comes into play. You know, because we need to justify that to our citizens as well.
And if they only need a letter of commitment from us by October 1st, we don't necessarily need to take action on this like at the next city council meeting or regular meeting.
Well, yeah,
We're gonna give it the letter.
well, so in the letter, they don't actually have to have the check yet, but in the letter, we'll have to spell out how much it's gonna be.
Okay.
So that will need council action.
So it needs to be an action item
Next time.
on the regular city council.
17.
Yes, sir.
I really think what we're spending, what they're spending on kids in Joshua, possibly more than, well, not necessarily.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir. They asked the county,
Joshua.
hold on, you guys. He asked about the county's involvement. Yeah, the county referred to some rules that the state has given them where they couldn't participate. I couldn't quite find out what those were, but no, the county is not participating in this request. Sorry.
All right, if nobody else has anything on this, the next item is discussion on potential de-annexation of 2 parcels of land located at 170, 171 Scarlet Oaks Drive. Josh?
Yeah, so hopefully you were all informed of the updated staff comment sheet that I updated yesterday. No?
I didn't get one. but-
Oh, you didn't get
I
it?
do, I'm
Okay.
working on it.
There's a lot of
Yeah, that should be what you had in your your
Oh,
packet that
okay.
you picked up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And if you got it on, yeah, that's great.
And so and technically speaking, we're actually not going to be discussing necessarily the annexation. And initially, when this first came to my plate, and I had to kind of scramble to get this before you guys because of what has been spelled out in the staff report. A lot of moving parts, very fluid, lots of things coming to our attention that we weren't necessarily aware of until literally just the last couple of days. Obviously, we knew about this last week when we put the agenda together, but some of the other details and ins and outs of it really didn't get finalized until yesterday. So I updated the staff comment sheet. Number one, to take out my recommendation because this is just a discussion point at this time. But also after actually meeting with the developer yesterday in person, he wasn't necessarily asking to be disannexed or de-annexed, however you're supposed to say that. He just wants some direction on what to do. So ultimately, you have a development that was platted partially in Burleson's ETJ, partially in the city limits. As I've referenced in the staff report, both the city of Burleson and myself signed up on that plat, which I had to do since it was part of it was inside the city. 2 of those lots in the development, which basically are at the end of the cul-de-sac of that street, are in the city limits of Joshua. Initially, if you remember, in the staff in the packet, I had the city limits that showed the this jutting out. If you remember, and kind of all out there by itself. I thought, well, initially I thought, well, it kind of makes some sense to kind of put that back in ETJ. But then that map I was referring to was a zoning map. It wasn't actually a city limits map, so that's on me. So the updated packet should have the city limits map, which includes all of our territory, including the ETJ, which is the yellow shaded area. So if I were to give a recommendation, which I'm not at this point, would be not to disannex because you have all this other ETJ area you would then be forced to deal with. So in essence, what I need from you guys and what Mr. Isbell is requesting is just some direction. What is the kind of the consensus on the council and what we do in terms of where the land stays? If it's within the city limits, right now, as I mentioned in my update, there has been a stop work order placed on those projects. One house is almost finished. Another one was being framed, and we put a stop work order on that until we can get some direction from you guys in terms of what we're going to do. If you guys are of the mind to disannex this area, I think it creates a bigger problem with the rest of the ETJ area, which I think would be much more problematic than keeping it in logistically and for some other, just philosophically as well in terms of our territory. Part of this land, looking back at it, part of it was some properties. I keep saying territory. Some properties that was in the land swap of Burleson back in 2015. So when you take into account the land swap and the finalization of that ETJ lines back in 2015, the annexation challenges that we've had, and we had a big challenge getting this into our territory to begin with. So I think that that needs to be considered when you guys are discussing this. But the other side of this is no, we'll allow it, and we need to keep it inside the city limits, and then, well, I and the development staff will have to get with Mr. Isbell to talk about building permits and try to catch up and do some inspections after the fact. to make sure that, this was done the right way. I spoke with Mr. Isbell yesterday and I actually invited him to be on here tonight. It doesn't look like he's logged in. But I did speak with him yesterday about this. He was very understanding, had no problem with the stop work order, just wants to make sure it's done the right way. Didn't really care, per se, whether it was in the city limits or not. He just wants to be able to build the houses. So that's where we stand now. I told him there wouldn't be decisions made tonight, but if there's direction from the council to just move forward with it as it's a City of Joshua project, I would do so and get with him, or have Aaron and the staff get with him as early as tomorrow to start that permitting process.
Yeah, my feelings are this would completely rip up what we had on the annexation, disannexation. We're basically would be saying, if we disannex him, here's a guy that didn't sign the development agreement, develop the property, and we're gonna kick him out, and everybody else that signed the agreement, we said, we're leaving you out of the city until you start development. So that would just, me, screw that all up. Josh and I talked yesterday, about what we do now. And, we talked about doing the stop work order. The gentleman says he contacted the city. Nobody knows for sure, but I would say what we should do is get the permits. One of the issues that I've got though is he's doing some streets in there, and there's one to this other house that, we need to make sure it's up to our standards. So I would say, make some new permits, whatever's necessary. And I don't know that we need to penalize him anything, but at least get him to where he has.
It's a very odd situation. And actually, Robert and I drove out there Tuesday to look at it. It's very odd in terms of the street, because the cul-de-sac just barely encroaches, if you will, upon those two lots that are inside the city limits. So you have this very weird situation to where the public infrastructure is arguably outside the city, but then you have these two lots served by that public infrastructure that are inside the city. And I will say, looking back on my emails on this, staff's emails and comments on this was right around November. We're in between city secretaries. The former city secretary did a lot of the planning and zoning things. We've actually made as you all know, since Alice came on, we've done a whole lot of changing since then in terms of who looks at what. So it is very possible that Mr. Isbell contacted someone here and was told he didn't need permits because he wasn't in the city limits. We don't have any documentation of any of those conversations. My conversations with staff members there were internal conversations about what do we do with this, but then it never went anywhere. There were email chains between staff members, emails between staff members back and forth about, hey, what are our options? What do you think we should do? Our city planner, city engineer, myself, some of the other staff were talking about it. This is around November, and then it just kind of went away. And then all of a sudden, there were houses being built. So so it's a mess. I think we can, given enough time and direction from you guys, I think we can get it figured out. But that's really, like I'm saying, up to you guys this evening.
Josh, do we know if these two large plats have been replatted and where those houses actually sit on this plat? Because there's 3 houses.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of the plat in-house because they went through the Burleson process. Burleson just made the developer get us to authorize it as well, because part of it's in the city. So I would actually have to either go to the county or go to the city of Burleson to get a copy of that plat to tell you for sure.
One question, but sort of followed up with that. You're saying that the one that the street down at the end of the cul-de-sac is going to something that's not in the city?
It does not appear to be.
Well, then that means if it got replanted and they had a development agreement, that property should be coming into the city.
That may be.
I mean, wouldn't that?
Well, are these the ones that were with the development agreements, or were these ones that were officially annexed?
Yeah, so.
Right, so these are the ones that were back in like 16 or 17.
Well, no, this would have been the last, this is the last round.
Yeah.
This area of town was 2018.
And everything that's in yellow has a development agreement, correct?
Right, so I think what the mayor is referring to is this right here.
Yeah.
There's another property here, looks like a house is being built in this little dirt road.
Right.
It sticks down there, so technically speaking, right here. So he's talking about this property right here.
Yeah, right here.
You're talking about that property, this little dirt area, it kind of It's like a dirt road.
Yeah, because this property was even with that property that was in the city.
Right.
They're
We're talking about this property right here. So the street comes down this way. There's 2 lots here, and then there's a dirt road that goes to this lot.
there's
lots.
Yeah, there's I think a slab there.
Yeah, that's right. But it looks
So
like a
yes,
slab.
if that's a part of that plat, then that development agreement, which they have, would have been voided at that time. And I guess it was the Jerry's point.
And I guess we need to find that out, don't we?
Yeah.
Bring them in.
I mean, I would say you need to work on the 2 houses, but the slab needs to stop until, I don't think you should do anything on that until, because that's when the road's going to become a City of Joshua road. I don't think it's that dirt, I mean,
Well, I was just using that as it looks
Yeah.
like that might be the,
I think that's the property line, I don't think that was a dirt road. But anyway, we just need to find out, and if that's the case, I don't think we need to be doing anything on that concrete slab till we understand if that needs to be brought into the city, and then make sure that that street comes up to city standards. All right? But I mean, the 2 houses, if they're in the city limits and, we make them do the permits, pay the fees, and let Eric go out there and see where we're at.
Is the street in the ETJ?
just,
Okay, we're not gonna ever be annexing again. I would,
No, the street is in the development agreement.
is
And the development agreement says, now which street are you talking about? The one that going down?
the existing street.
So this here, I'm looking, this is the court that barely gets into these,
Right.
and that definitely gets into the annex
Right.
spot. We're talking about here.
No, we're talking about right here, you're building a slab, right there.
Okay, yeah, so again, that's outside. I don't think we can control the street or any of that, but definitely.
Well, that's what we need to find out. I think it's in,
Because if we say,
development.
we're gonna control the street, they're gonna fight for it now.
Oh, no, we're not going to control that street, but I think we need to make sure this street, if it's in the city, or if it's in somebody that's under the development.
Yeah, this is the best one to look at.
So this is where the roads come.
It's right here.
Okay. And it comes up into.
He's talking about this property here and this.
This one right here.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's south side of the road. And this yellow part's the road, TJ.
I'm sorry, Eric. So
This
this is City of Joshua on this side.
Right.
So this is already TJ, this is City of Burleson.
Okay. So
City of Burleson, ETJ.
the yellows are ETJ.
Correct.
Okay. So if they're, which is really not ETJ anymore. Right, yeah, I know. So if they're developing on this one and they got a development agreement, that's a problem, but.
Joe's point is, this got, see how this is all one lot? That got replatted into that, and that is gonna serve that house. They've gotta put some type of street there. That's what it goes.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at here, it's just hard to tell whether or not, where that other slab is. We need to figure out if that other slab is partially on, in this area, or if it's on this, if it's not, if it's all 100% in this area, then we don't need to worry about it. That's ETJ. But if any part of that lot goes over here, then that becomes, yeah, and actually it's down here, right? It's actually further down here.
So I'm all for letting them go ahead and finish the houses they've started.
The 2
Get
houses,
the permits, the inspection, so on and so forth, with no penalties.
right.
Because of misunderstanding and so on. I'm fine with that. That makes my sense.
They're working on it.
Okay. So that Josh has some direction. Scott was just saying, he was sort of like I was, let him go ahead and work on the 2 houses. They're under construction, pay the fee. I think we need to get Aaron out there and tell him to put in the permits and have Aaron go out and make sure everything that he can check that's already been done is up to snuff.
Yeah, so kind of first things first, it's remaining in the city.
Yes. Does anybody here want to disannex them?
No.
Okay. So,
Okay,
yeah,
and so that gives me everything I need to
Right.
be able to,
Yes.
okay. And then we just need to find out where that other slab is, get the, I don't know, whatever we need to do, and then address that one, once we find out.
Will they have to comply with drainage all of that.
I don't, like I said the other day, there's lots of, Aaron was asking me a lot of dozen questions yesterday too. And I was like, I just need to know whether we're gonna have it in the city or not. And I'll try to answer the
It's in the
questions.
floodplain, so I just had to sort of,
Yeah. It's real close.
In a perfect world, we would have been notified of this early on.
all right, anybody else have any other questions on that? All right, Josh, you got the public
Yes, sir.
direction?
That's right.
Next, public forum. Did we have anybody that turned in anything?
No, sir.
In our public forum. Next is regular agenda item. And so this is a public hearing. So I'm going to open up a public hearing at 7:05 on the proposed tax rate for the city of Joshua for the year, tax year 2020, and announce the meeting time and adoption, which I guess will be September 17th meeting at 6:30.
That's correct.
Does anybody have any questions on that particular item? And what are we doing in a public hearing? I mean, we're having a public hearing. So
Well,
we have
technically,
comments.
Technically, again, like we talked about at length yesterday today, technically this is a public hearing on a tax increase. Now, what that means is that we're raising, what that literally means is we're raising about $10,000 more in property tax revenue than we did the year before.
Without a property
This is not a
tax
tax
rate
rate
increase.
increase.
Okay.
This is the difference at $10,000 which is 0.39%. As you, if you remember on the cover sheet of the budget, which is something we legally have to put there. That is the difference between our current rate of 76527 and the no new revenue rate of 761240. It's literally $10,000 difference. So, but because it's more than zero, we have to publish notice of a tax increase. The mayor and I were going round and round about this, about what they should really call this.
Tax revenue
Tax revenue
increase.
increase, that's correct. And actually, I think we used to have a notice, one of the additional notices we had to do did say tax revenue increase, but we also had to do this. So the one good thing about the rules they changed is we only have to have one public hearing. The bad thing about it is having to explain to people it's not really a tax increase. When it's all said and done, as a matter of fact, Joe and I went over this earlier today, and I went over the tax assessor. The little grid there at the bottom of the notice that talks about the average homestead, the tax being an increase of $70. That actually is incorrect. It's $31 for the year on an average homestead. There's still some questions on, yes, Mayor. There's still some question whether that $31 is accurate, but by my calculations, even if we were to adopt a no new revenue rate, there still would be an average increase of $23 on the average home. That's because while we did the 5% homestead exemption, appraised values went up to the extent that the 5% didn't completely wipe that out. So there's going to be some nominal, again, less than 0.5% of people's, tax bills that may go up a little bit, on average $30 for the year. So, but again, even the no new revenue rate calculations, they don't have to be zero. They say effectively would raise the same. So I would frankly argue that $10,000 is effectively the same as last year, but those are how the rules are now.
So actually, this is an action item too, correct? So we're basically the motion will be to set the tax rate at so we're not having an action item?
No, it's just a public hearing. Yeah.
So we already set the tax rate?
When we do that, we
last-
adopt the budget.
Okay.
So remember, we adopt the budget and then we adopt the tax rate. And we'll
And
do
we
that.
can't go up, we can go down.
Correct.
All right. So does anybody have any questions on this? That we're basically just going to be, also, the only action that we've got now, or do we have it, is just to set the date and time? Okay, so that's it.
And we're just announcing it. I mean, we published notice of the budget hearing tonight.
Today.
We published it today. So there's no action the council takes. We just have to do it per the calendar. The state law.
Are you talking about being published in
The newspaper.
the one that the last 4 pages didn't go out?
Oh, no.
But it doesn't, yeah. Because they talk about the big sports section, so I already looked at it online.
Yeah. Everybody got it. All right, so does anybody have any more public comment
I've got a
on the
question.
proposed rate?
I've got a question.
Okay.
Okay, on here it says, at as the date of this notice, it's unknown whether we're gonna have people here, not here, so on and so forth. More than likely, the rules are not gonna change concerning having people present. You actually come into the chamber to talk about this stuff, correct?
Probably not.
So it's probably gonna be an online meeting just like this. Can we not just go ahead and announce that?
I would, let's wait, because the governor's supposed to make an announcement, and I would hate for him to make that announcement here in a couple of days and throw this in there.
This is just, remember, this is talking about this evening.
Yeah.
This is tonight's meeting.
Okay.
So, as a matter of fact, we talked about that, and we actually reached out to a lot of our counterparts, and it's kind of what everybody was, as of the day of this meeting, we really don't know, because we really don't know any day it could change. Now, we agree it's likely not going to change, so even on the 17th, the budget hearing, we published notice of it being on Zoom once we actually post the agenda. But of course, we do it a week ahead, usually, so, yeah, it's likely it will continue to be held by Zoom.
And Mayor, that exact wording was given to us by Terry,
Okay.
the city attorney, to put on all the notices.
Okay. All right,
Thank you.
somebody like to make a motion to.
There's no-
No motion, never mind. If nobody has any other comments on the hearing at 7:11. All right, next item, discuss, consider, and take possible action on amendments to the city employee personnel handbook.
Yes, Mayor. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read the draft comment sheet on this one. I've got two changes I would really like you guys to consider. If you remember the proposed budget, one of the things, I don't want to hit it all too much about how challenging the budget was. I've already done that quite a bit. But one of the things that I was, I had to make some choices in that budget in terms of cuts. And one of the things that I did end up removing from the proposed budget was the city's HSA contribution for the employees. A couple of years ago, we switched from a PPO plan to the HMO plan, which is the high deductible, what's it called? Basically catastrophic coverage. In order to get to kind of lessen the pain of that change, because it was problematic for a lot of people, part of that plan allows for a health savings account. So initially we had FSAs, right? So you could basically put in some money. You could elect, say $1,200. It's $100 a month. January 1st, you had $1,200 on a debit card. You can use it for medical expenses. But that was a use it or lose it proposition for FSAs. The HMO HSA setup is you actually you can only use what's in your account. And so because everybody was starting with zero the first year, the city actually contributed $1,000 to everybody's HSA to kind of get them started. And then this year we did $500. Going to the next year's budget, in order that was about $20,000 expense, so I cut that out of the budget in the proposed budget. After discussing with the department heads the next day, in terms of their additional funding requests, some of the things that they had requested made it to the final proposed budget, some didn't. The consensus was among the department heads that, and something that I didn't, the reason I took that HSA contribution out is because I felt like that was the least impactful for the employees. I didn't want to do anything with longevity. I felt like that would be unnecessary. Obviously didn't want to, mess with any merit increases, that sort of thing. But it was, it kind of explained to me that it was probably more impactful than I thought. So what I did is I proposed to the department heads to, all right, I'll put that back in, but you've got to fund the $20,000 because I just can't come up with another $20,000. We're already dipping into reserves by quite a good amount. And so that's what they set about doing. Each department had a specific, number that contributed to that 20,000, and they, one by one, kind of basically sacrificially put, they would rather guarantee the HSA contribution than a specific piece of equipment and gamble on maybe the equipment coming back mid-year or some, we have some savings later on. So I agreed to do that. In the course of that conversation, exactly, I give the credit to Alice on this. Actually have a couple of people, actually we have two people. One who's not even on the insurance, that's Chief Griffith. When he came onto the city, he was already on his spouse's insurance, preferred that plan, so he stayed on that. on that plan. Alice, for some miscommunication, or chalk it up to that, signed on to the city's health insurance plan, but is also on her husband's. So she has dual coverage, which she actually prefers her husband's plan because it was a PPO plan. So we actually came up with the idea. There was a misunderstanding of whether we actually had a 100% participation requirement in our plan or not. We don't actually have that. So come open enrollment, if somebody is in our plan and finds another plan outside the city, they are allowed to de-enroll, if you will, or unenroll from our plan and get on this other plan. So Alice was like, I prefer this other plan. I'm glad to unenroll and save the city about $5,000 for the year. There's $5,000 of the 20 right there. The only kicker was that unenrolling from the plan would cost her the HSA contribution, which she used for medications. So the idea that I came up with, and we actually, again, came from our former city, was what you see in the, and I took these out of order, I apologize, was the, if a city employee decides to not take the city insurance, then I would like to add to the city personnel policy that paragraph there that allows us to provide them what I would call a offset stipend. You know, they're saving us quite a bit of money, but not signing on to the city insurance. But in order that they don't lose that HSA contribution, add that to their wages, just like we do a cell phone stipend for those who use their cell phones for city work. As it reads there, the city may elect to pay up to $100 a month in the form of an offset stipend to a qualifying employee that has health insurance coverage from another source other than the city. Joshua, if the employee chooses to use the other insurance in lieu of insurance with the city, the amount will be determined annually and is subject to budgetary considerations. This pay is subject to federal taxes. This benefit may be canceled at any time. And I put a little a table in there of the cost savings to the city if the employee unenrolls or declines the coverage. But we also offer them the HSA offset, anywhere from basically $4,000 to $4,500 a year. So that is the first part of this. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that part of this item?
You've got like the 600 for the estimated off-site stipend, but we're giving them $100 a month. But then you've got the savings. It looks like the bottom line number is right, but why wouldn't it be $1,200 for the off-site stipend?
Well, I'm not proposing we do $100 a month. I'm proposing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm proposing 500, 600 for the year. So
Okay.
yeah, it's 50 a month. That just gives us the flexibility that if the budget, again, annually it would be $1,200 if we did $100,
Gotcha.
but it would be capped at $100 a month per the policy. But this year it's at 600, and the reason it's 600 is because it's subject to federal taxes, and so they may come out a little bit ahead of the other employees by I think $13 or $14, but in order for them to get the same. The HSA contributions are not taxable, so in order for them to get the same benefit, we would have to provide a little bit more of an offset to offset the payroll taxes they would have to.
But we're not having to pay retirement benefits or anything.
Is our premium per employee set across the board per employee, or is that
Correct.
variable?
So they don't have flexible savings account anymore?
No, so when we made the switch to the PPO plan, the high deductible health savings account, that is where it kind of triggers the HSA. You can't have both. There's certain IRS constraints about that.
So you're maintaining the other, not the flexible spending, but
The HSA. Now, granted, if somebody like Alice in this unenrolls this fall, she'll no longer have the HSA officially.
But if we went within flexible, then she'd be eligible. She could sign up for a flexible spending.
Right.
Okay, we since we have the PPO or the HMO,
Right.
we can't have a flexible. It has to be the health savings.
Right, because yes, the high deductible health savings account aspect of that.
Which is also taxable.
What is now?
Health savings account?
No.
It's not.
No, it's not.
And it carries forward.
And it carries, yeah, it rolls over year to year. So
But
you
the
can
stipend-
actually get to the point to where if you get to a certain balance in your HSA account, you can actually invest that and actually make more money on it. You have to have a certain, minimum balance in there to do that. And some employees actually have done that a few times.
So if they don't have the city insurance, they get the stipend is taxable.
Right.
Is that stipend added to their paycheck?
Right.
Okay, but like with an HSA, we set the money aside and we hold it.
Right. Well, it goes into their account. They literally have a bank account. Right.
But it's held until they file a claim against it.
It's a debit card.
Okay. And it's given to them at the end of the year, every year, or?
Yeah, I don't think I even have, I'm not sure. My office may have.
I thought the HSA can just continue to grow, so how do they take funds out of it if they need it?
With the debit card.
Okay. So that
It works similar to the flexible spending.
It's very similar. It's just in terms of the limits, there aren't the same limits on the HSA as there are FSA. It rolls over as when the FSA is using to lose it. There's also, the HSA is a little bit more employee risk-based because of the, we basically have to guarantee the balance, it balances in some cases. So, and if it's their money, at the FSA, so if somebody said, I'm gonna put in $100 a month, and so $1,200 goes in there, if they quit a month later, they don't get to take the money with them.
Right.
But in an HSA, if you
It's
quit,
their money.
whatever money in there, it goes with you.
So
It's
how
your
do
account.
when would we put the money in as a lump sum or put it in monthly?
I think last year we did it in two cycles, because we did it 500 and 500.
Like,
And then it may have been all at once. I think I would have to ask Joe.
my question would be like. somebody
January,
quit-
it was January. We
Yeah,
put
but I
it
mean,
in.
what if somebody was there in January, but put in their account when they quit in February? And then we got to hire a new person.
But I think there's a management company that whether we fund the account today or every quarter or whatever, they fund it immediately on day one on an FSA, right?
Right.
But the health spending account, that's funded in real time.
Right.
So my question is what do you do, like I said, if somebody.
That was what I was getting, the employee risk thing about the contribution. So
Right.
we put in $500 to
Right.
January 1.
Right,
Maybe we haven't had the payday yet. And so
Right.
technically speaking, the employee hasn't actually contributed yet. If they
Right.
turn around and quit, they'd be taking the $500 with them.
okay, then if we hired somebody to take their place, we have to give them $500?
Right.
That's the only glitch I see.
But that actually is mutually exclusive from what we're talking. That occurs whether we have it.
No,
Yeah, that would be happening where we were talking
Right,
about.
whether
this
we're
tonight.
making this change or not, but it just seems like it'd be, if we go through a lot of employees, that's an expense we haven't budgeted for.
Well, we don't because we can't hire them. So.
We got the opposite problem.
And why did you go to HMO?
$200 a month per employee. Yeah,
Where's the 100?
Yeah, we just did that.
well, we saw about I want to say 60%. It was 50 to 60% increase on the when we had to make the change from PPO to HMO. It was just a matter of the city couldn't afford it. We had, and then this year, we already being on HMO, as we found out, we still had a 20% increase. So we're seeing that a little bit lower now in the proposed budget. I'm assuming a 50% increase because that's what we met with Brenson a couple of weeks ago. They were seeing 12 to 14%, so I felt comfortable with the 15%. But yeah, it just costs too much.
Could you just at least get them to maybe give us one HMO? Because I do hear a lot of employees, they don't like our insurance policy at all.
Give us what now?
Give us a quote on an HMO, just to
You
see
mean
what.
PPO?
Yeah, PPO.
Oh yeah, they give me a broad range of them.
I just like to say, like I said, a lot of them just say, it's just, it doesn't.
I would agree.
You know, I
The
think-
PPO was way better. I
Yeah.
can speak that from the
What
experience.
Trump was saying, we were gonna pay for a PPO,
or an HMO.
X number of dollars, and if you want this plan, You've got to come up with the rest of it.
Well, yeah, and I've done that. Obamacare had changed the game in a lot of flexibility employers had. Because initially, before that, like for instance, we had 1 year, my previous year, we had TML. In my first year we got here, we had TML.
We're chasing a rabbit trail here. This is not what the item is that we.
Well, I think they're discussing it. I mean, I think it's information. Because they're getting ready to do those bids, we need to make sure, we're doing.
Well, that's what I was trying to say earlier, like a lot of the questions aren't really they're gonna be questions no matter what, they aren't really pertain to this, but, I forgot, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, this situation was with me for 37 years with the federal government when my wife was a teacher. They offered teacher insurance at the school district or my federal government. Well, you had to have self and family. There wasn't any self and wife or self on. You had self only or self and family.
Right.
So we had her on that because we had kids, and she was losing the entire amount that the district would be contributing into her insurance. So to get a $500 deal or whatever amount, even though it's not near what we're having to pay for everybody else, is a perk to those that have a better plan like ours.
Well, and that's kind of brings it full circle to the point here. This actually allowing this flexibility to employee actually save the city money and gives employees
Right.
kind of what they want. If they have a better deal out there that they can get. Then,
Well, and it's not 100% because like my wife's a teacher. Of course, she's not gonna take the teacher. She takes my insurance. But since she's taking my insurance, I pay an additional $100 a month just because she could take some other insurance. Since she declined that insurance, I paid 100 more than as if she had no insurance available, it'd be less.
well, a lot of personal policies say that. If you came in with insurance that was a qualifying insurance, and you got, in this case, the cities, and you would have to pay more.
Let's just, like I said, get the other numbers and then we can have that discussion
Yeah,
when we get the policy.
well, that'll be like.
Yeah, so we just between now and then get it and we'll discuss that, but I guess you got some more parts of this one to talk about.
Yeah, so there's there's the request to add that to the personnel policy. The other addition, it's a lot less, I think, a lot easier. Whenever we adopted the council a couple of years ago, it asked me to come up with a merit-based salary increase system rather than just kind of what we consider across the board pay raises, which were practically tied to evaluations, but not officially tied to evaluations like they are now. One of the things that I wanted to use this year as an occasion to do it, whenever we adopted the merit-based increase system, we established the tiers, but what we never really did is define what the base was. Okay, so the last, since we've been doing the merit-based adjustments, I've been using the DFW regional CPI as the base for that, which I thought was extremely objective, data-driven numbers for this region. But you could argue I did it unilaterally because it was never actually officially adopted as what the base pool was. So this is just to really formalize that. And if any of you are aware, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases that number every 2 months. So in terms of our budgeting season, that's usually May. That's May and July. Okay, last year when I submitted the proposed budget, I had to use the May numbers, and a week later the July numbers came out. It actually would have been to the employee's benefit had I waited a week because it's actually higher. The inflation was higher than what the number I used. This year, because of COVID and a lot of things, it's gone all kinds of all over the map. This year, and I didn't actually. It's in my proposed budget working documents. But in May it was negative 0.5%, and when July came out it was 0.8%. So 0.4%. So
During this COVID, it's gonna be bad.
yeah. So in the proposed budget brief, in each department there's an average salary increase at the very top of each department's box. It tells you kind of what the average is for that department, and it's obviously not going to be the same for every employee because not everyone's eligible for the merit increase because of when they start and work and whatnot. But all this does is just gives an official definition to the base, so I'm not just picking something to use, which, you know, could be, you know, you use anything using that, but this is just asking you guys to formally adopt this as the base for the merit pool system.
So you're thinking, you plan on what, 0.8?
Yeah, so so we can talk about the proposed budget? Okay, so in this year's proposed budget, it was 0.4. The July number was 0.4. I felt really bad last year about submitting that proposed budget, and a week later it was higher. Employees actually would have gotten more of a bump had I waited a week. But I had to submit the proposed budget on a certain deadline, so I actually added that back into this year's merit increases. I thought that was the only fair thing to do. So it's 3.2% would have been the max that somebody could have gotten. Most people, think, again, the averages, I don't have them in front of me because I wasn't prepared to talk about it this evening. But most was 2.8%, 2.8 to 3.2%. But again, that wasn't across the board. That was based off of evaluations.
Any questions?
Make a motion, we approve both items.
We've got a motion.
I'll second it.
That's a motion by Robert Burton, second by Angela Nichols to approve the amendments to the city's employee personnel handbook. Since we've got everybody here, we can do a regular vote. So all those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next item, discuss, consider, and take possible action on the interlocal cooperative agreement. I'll ask about cooperative in a minute. Between the city of Joshua and Johnson County contracting for the provision of police dispatch services and authorize the mayor to sign. Now, this is basically just the dispatch fees that we're in our third year now. Every year, a couple of years ago, the county needed to have some more money, so they figured the best way to do that would just be get the money from the cities.
Double tax the citizens.
Double
of the
taxes.
city.
So they came up with a plan where, although for the last, I don't know how many years, that was a service that was provided, since it's provided to all the citizens of the county, they decided to start charging the cities. And they did it on a graduated scale. It was 25% the first year, 50% the second, 75%, which is where we're at this year. And then next year it'll go to 100%. And what they did is they took, I believe it was the personnel cost of dispatch, divided it by the number of calls. And at least we haven't had as many calls going to dispatch as cities of similar size. So I'm not sure how that happened, but if you had anything to do with it, thanks. It keeps our number down. But basically, this is just the agreement formalizing that, which is the exact same as they've done for the last 2 years. And I think our share this year is what, $30-something thousand?
40,000 basically. And this was included in the budget. And we, Chief anticipated that number, so we have included the top range.
Didn't this raise us about originally?
Yeah, we thought it was going to be around 100,000 total. It's 25%, but the way they do the formula, it's sort of like that.
What was that?
I think Chief Short gets himself on the spot, paying people, they just call up.
But Josh is trying to talk to Rick.
He was just asking about the amount we're gonna pay, and he was just verifying what's on the sheet, what we're gonna pay. Yeah, but Robert, to your question, this initially, the estimate was gonna be about 100 grand a year. And then when they actually went in, I think frankly, because we came in and said, hey, that's gonna be too much, it's not really, I think commensurate with the type of pressure we put on dispatch. So I'm not really I'm okay with the formula and how to use it, whether you're doing formulas, you gotta come up with something. The only issue I really have is after next year, and we're at the 100% mark, that number is just gonna continue to go up because it's gonna be a factor of their budget. So whenever their people get pay increases or whatever else happens, our number will continue to go up every year. We don't know about how much, but so it's just gonna continue to go up, just not in these $10,000 and $12,000 chunks that it has been the last couple of years. But like the mayor says, it kind of is what it is. We either want dispatch or, and I can't pay, I can't
Well,
I
a
couldn't
certain
be on
point,
dispatch for 40 grand a year.
you know, 5-6 years down the road, if we find that's $120,000-$140,000 expense, yes, at that time. we
Well, I
can.
know Venus and Keene and some of them were looking at going, pulling together and doing their own. I don't know whether they're still doing that, but I think that will always be an option that we're
Right,
going to be looking at.
I think it will get.
Well, that's exactly why I mentioned that. It would have made very well, you to the point
And
where
then they will pucker, because, I mean, when the county loses $500,000, because everybody pulled out their tent.
And like I said, we could have the exact same number next year, and they decide that they need to hire another employee, well, our number went up, even though we just had the same number of dispatch calls. So anyway, it is what it is. Anybody have any questions on it? Entertain a motion.
We've got no choice. We
All
gotta
right,
have
got a motion by
dispatch.
Scott. Do I have a second?
I want to go on record, any citizen who watches this or is listening to this, next election, you need to let your people know that this is wrong. The city citizens are being double taxed for a service that we're already paying for. It needs to stop
At the county level.
at the county level, exactly. Just like the ESD, we're being double taxed for fire service.
I'll second, Joe.
All right. Got a motion by Scott Kimball, seconded by Jerry Moore, to approve the interlocal agreement with the city of Joshua, Johnson County, providing for police dispatch. Any other questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Next.
Just have 6 here tonight.
Oh, got Mike over here. Sorry. Where is Mike? He's like,
Oh, yeah, I haven't heard from them.
all right, next item, discuss, consider, and take possible action on interlocal cooperative agreement between the city of Joshua and Johnson County, contracting for the housing of individuals detained for Class C misdemeanor offenses and authorized mayor to sign. This is something we used to not pay for, and we're having to pay for now. This one goes back a little bit further than this. We've been doing this about 4 or 5 years now. Luckily, we don't send that many people down there to be arrested. It was the number that we sent last year.
Yeah, it's only Class C misdemeanors, and from a practical standpoint, the only thing that we arrest, generally you write citation for Class C misdemeanors, so really all you have is public intox, something that we can't do something here. And I don't think that we've actually been diligent. I think when they do the census, usually those people are in and out before that.
Right. Yeah, it's been a pretty low amount, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Josh. I mean, it's not a very
yes.
big number.
Right.
No, it's like, that's dollars. a
Yeah,
day.
$100 maybe.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? Entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve.
Got a motion by Jerry Moore, seconded by Robert Purdom, to approve the interlocal cooperative agreement between the city of Joshua and Johnson County for contracting the housing of individuals detained for Class C misdemeanors. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Next item, discuss, consider, and take possible action on the official ballot of the Texas Municipal League Intergovernmental Risk Pool Board of Trustees election and authorize the mayor to execute the official ballot. How do we even know? Do you know any of these people?
I actually do know a couple of them, but I was actually doing double checking my TML region. Because I think that, it stands to reason that anybody within our region is probably going to have, obviously our areas of best interest. Not that the others weren't. The TML IRP Board of Trustees isn't really political, if you will. And I want to say we are region, we're region 8. But so I do know, just for, I guess, full disclosure, I do know Mr. Jeffrey Snyder. It's in place 3. He's city manager of City of Plainview. That was right up the road from where I served before I served here. And then Sean Overrider, who's in Lamesa, just down the road from Lubbock. I know him as well. But the others, I did not have the pleasure of meeting. So.
Are we supposed to vote for each place? So we have 4 votes that we have to place?
Yeah, so, obviously there's let's see, place 1 and
2, 3, and 4.
the place 1, there's only 1 candidate. I think it says, what does it say? Yeah, so obviously Mr. Herrera would get that, but this is just a matter of, yeah, just placing our votes for the candidates per place. And frankly, when it comes to the TML board, either TMRS is the same way, all the TML boards are pretty even across the board. You're really not gonna go wrong with anybody. Most
And
everybody,
this is doing the risk pool for
Right.
insurance.
board
right?
of trustee, right,
Yeah.
that's right.
So it's not like they're gonna have a lot of impact or.
That's true. That's what I say. It's not real political, it's not real,
Right.
territorial, and that sort of thing. And we frankly don't even really have to do anything, but, we don't have to do it, but it's, it's our kind of our right to be able to vote for the city's right, the council's right to vote for that.
All right, I'm just gonna go through this. So for place one, is everybody okay voting for Robert Herrera? No? Anybody else have a comment one way or the other?
Anybody have a writing candidate's name? Josh Jones?
Yeah.
Please, no.
Maybe we can get that on everyone. Everybody do that? Everyone. We'll make a motion.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's make a motion.
Yeah. I'll entertain the motion.
No, you won't.
Huh?
Put Alice in for 3 and 4.
We're all for it. How you gonna get one of them?
He would love it.
Well, there's some mayors in there.
There are.
Well, let me ask this, do we want to even put in a vote?
Not on place one, no.
Oh.
Do you
The
know
other
Mr.
ones are
Herrera?
gonna wait, well,
Pardon?
Do you know Mr. Herrera?
No, I just don't vote for any incumbent.
All right, so but you're willing to vote for the rest of them where there's multiple places going?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Jerry, please.
Hey, I'm good with Herrera.
All right. Anybody else? Rick,
Which one we voting on?
place one.
Place one. All right.
All right, place two.
Chris Armacost.
We know Scott wants place one, the first one, right?
Yep.
He did get the above and beyond citizen award.
Yep.
Anybody else have any other? We'll go with Chris Armacost for place two.
Okay.
All right, place three, we got any incumbents? No incumbent, we have somebody from Region 8, which is our district, so we want to.
George Hyde.
Yeah, but he's an attorney.
Yeah, George Hyde, so is everybody okay with George Hyde for place three?
Incumbents, attorneys.
City managers.
It's like Dante's circle here. Man. Just kind of keep going.
All right, place four. Only one I would say would be the last guy, because he's from the city of La Mesa, which is about the same size as Joshua. One of them's from Houston, and I don't think Houston people do it. Conmall's pretty good size, but
I stay with that.
everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Sean Orenmeyer, he's the city manager for the city of La Mesa, which is probably similar to our size.
I don't know any of them. The first guy, Robert, he's got a lot of credentials there.
Yeah, but he's an incumbent, Scott doesn't like incumbents. Well, so Rick likes Houck, so between Houck and Ocean Line, who's everybody like?
Ocean liner.
Whatever.
Ocean line.
Ocean Line, I'd say Ocean Line. Robert, who do you say?
Overnight.
Angela?
I'll go with him.
Oh, that's four, so, all right, so I need a motion to select Robert Herrera for place one, Chris Armacost for place two, George Hyde for place three, and Sean Overunder, whatever, for place four.
So moved.
Second. We got a motion by Jerry Moore, second by Robert Harden, to approve the ones just mentioned. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. 6-0. Seems like Mike's over there. Yeah. Anybody have any requests for a future agenda item? If not, we're adjourned at 7:44.